Hi, Democrats. Today is Monday, September 13th, and it's time for the Chair's Daily Life. Happy Monday. So, I usually come here and I talk about politics. And today I'm going to talk about politics, but it's going to be a little bit different. So, I usually talk about bills, electeds, and elections. I don't have a bill today, but I want to talk about something that I haven't spoken that much on. Um, I want to talk about Julius Jones. As some of you know, Julius Jones is an inmate at McAllister who has been convicted of murder, a murder that happened when he was 19 years old. And I believe he's been on death row for, I know it's going to be more than 20 years, but I can't remember exactly how long he's been there. And there's been a lot of lead up to what's going on. One of the first things that our current Attorney General did when he became appointed Attorney General was to seek an execution date for Mr. Jones. There were other inmates that had been on death row longer than Mr. Jones, but because Mr. Jones has garnered national notoriety, national attention, folks, including celebrities, a lot of local folks in Oklahoma City who knew him, who grew up with him, who are familiar with his story, have been advocating for A, his release, or B, at least a commutation of his sentence from death to life. From death to life. Kim Kardashian, Kevin Durant are some of the notables, and then some local folks. I don't speak on this that much because I am not a legal expert, nor did I grow up with Mr. Jones. But from what I've been able to glean from those who know him and from the reading that I've done, there is question as to whether or not Mr. Jones is actually guilty. And if there's question as to whether or not he's guilty, execution is out of line. It's just out of line until we get to the bottom of it. Execution is out of line. And so there have been a lot of advocacy work for Mr. Jones. So today he had a hearing before the Pardon and Parole Board to decide whether or not his case could be commuted. There's been a lot of machinations in the interim. DA Prater has been pressuring members of the Pardon and Parole Board to recuse themselves, to drop out, and one actually did quit because he felt like he was being threatened for doing his job. Nevertheless, the the hearing was today, and the Pardon and Parole Board recommended commuting Mr. Jones's sentence. So that is one for Julius Jones advocacies. That is a positive note. That does not mean that his sentence has been commuted. The next step is that it goes to the governor. At this point, it is up to the governor to commute Mr. Jones's sentence from that of a death penalty case to life. I know that the advocates for Mr. Jones wants that commutation to happen. Here's what happens if the governor doesn't sign it. If the governor doesn't sign it by November 18th, Mr. Jones will be he can be executed as early as November 18th. So that's where we are. You will hear about it on the news. It's a lot of story. It made national news. I think Dateline did a special on it, and it's happening close to home. Witnesses recanted, restated their case, and that's where my doubt lies, is based on the witnesses changing their story and coming back, and there are no winners in this issue, because the survivors of the person that Mr. Jones is accused of murdering, they are having to relive it as well. They are having to deal with it as well. And Oklahoma keeps making the news. And so there are no clear winners. Let's just hope that this works out the way that it is supposed to work out and not fall prey to more politics. So I didn't feel like I could let the day go without mentioning that because it is a big deal. It is a big deal, and it's a precedent-setting case. It's the first case that has been that there was a hearing for death row inmates by the Probation and Parole Commission. And so it's a big deal. And there's been, like I said, a lot of stuff going on in the background. It is a big deal, both for Mr. Jones and the Howell family, but also for Oklahoma and how we conduct ourselves, with the law and take out all of the personal stuff and all of the political stuff and just look at the law. So I wanted to come on and talk about that without trying to taint your view either way. But I talked about it about a month ago, and I like to come back and put a bow on things. So it brings me to DA Prater. Mr. Prater is the DA in Oklahoma County who is not running again. And as of late, and when I say late, the last 3 years, he's been highly political and made a lot of questionable decisions and gotten involved with the activists. And he's a Democrat. He's not running again. We need a candidate. And I've had a bunch of names, but no one's committed and announced. And we're still having conversations, but a bunch of names that have been bandied about who could be the DA for Oklahoma County. This case being national case, and the fact that our current DA got involved in the ways that he got involved also made national news. People don't think about the DA until your loved one is facing the DA. People don't think about the DA until they make the news. And so a lot of times the DA is an office that doesn't garner as much votes as your House of your state House representative, your state Senate. But the DA is every bit as important. We complain about criminal justice reform all the time in between elections, and then we don't really do our research on our DA candidate and pick our DA candidate. It is important. That seat will be up in 2022, and we need a candidate to run for that, a serious-minded candidate who leans towards criminal justice reform rather than the status quo while maintaining the rules of law. All righty. So that's my plug for if you're thinking about running or you know somebody who should run, have them reach out to me because we need to have those conversations and get them prepped for running for office. All right. So I needed to talk about that. The elected official that I want to talk about, you thought it was David Prater, didn't you? Okay. He was a freebie. I want to talk about former President George Bush. Y'all didn't know me back then? Not a fan of former President George Bush. However, he was presidential, and we were reminded of the fact that although I did not agree with him, I never thought he was evil. I just thought he wasn't the right guy for the job and maybe not the most competent, but I didn't think he was evil. And his remarks on September 11th reminded me he's not an evil guy, and he wants what's good. He wants what's good for America, and he wants us to unite. There can be no unity without reconciliation. We all have to get together. We all have to band together, but we also need to deal with the truth. And the truth of the matter is that we're still not, the January 6th commission isn't resolved. I don't know how ready I am to buddy up with folks who stormed the Capitol and tried to unseat our democracy. I'm working on it. I am a work in progress, and I hope you guys join me. So I just wanted to say something positive about a Republican today. All righty. Tomorrow, in half of the counties in the state, there will be elections. There are elections and propositions on the ballot tomorrow, September 14th. If you got an absentee ballot for that election and you have not mailed it back, you have until today at 5 to get that turned in. Today at 5, you have to go to your county election board with an ID and turn that in. Otherwise, if you didn't do the absentee ballot, you didn't vote over the weekend, tomorrow the polls are open from 7 to 7. Go out, look at your sample ballot, make sure that you are familiar with what's going on, do your research, and show up tomorrow, September 14th, and cast your ballot. All righty. That's my bills, my elected, and my elections. You guys have a wonderful day. I'll be back tomorrow at 4:15.